Oh, you're sick, are you?
No, I'm
Did I
just
catch you in a sick
got a
time?
bit of a runny nose because it's getting a little cold over here, but it's fine.
Yes, here as well. It's getting a little on the chilly side. I've got my little Easter Island mug, perfect for the topic religion. Uh, g- Generalissimo Franco is here to speak to me
Yes.
about religion. Now you don't even
Well,
know. I'm not even sure I really primed you as to what I hope I did explain what I want to talk about.
just
Probably not. I just like, oh, let's go
no.
through it.
You just said
Religion,
you want to do a little
at random. But
script
like,
thing about religion. I'm like,
I just
yeah,
keep thinking
why
about it.
not?
I keep thinking about it and talking about it, and it keeps coming up. So I just think we should hash it out. I just want to talk to somebody about it. Somebody who knows a bit about it. I just a mood, a feeling I have, I guess. But it's such an interesting topic, not just historically, religion, how it changes, especially how it changes. I was going to title this "Religion: The Natural Selection of Religion," but it sounded, or it was frankly too many words to fit on my little quick thumbnail I had to make. But this is what I want to talk about: is how it bizarre, what a bizarre thing it is to begin with, how it morphs and changes, how it has in the past, new cults taking on new forms, and how different religions can splinter into so many things. And like your idea of what you like, just talk about what we might think it might morph into next and stuff like this. So that's
Right.
if I didn't explain it to you earlier, that's what I wanted to talk about. Is that what did I explain it to you that way, or what?
You did mention something about the idea of what it's going to morph into next, and yeah, good question. Honestly, a question we can perhaps try to answer with the historical perspective, perhaps with some comparisons. Perhaps if we consider the term religion in a broader sense, right? Because there's also what people have been calling the secular religion of people who call themselves atheists yet hold on to beliefs that are not necessarily empirically backed. Um, like if we think ourselves back to the 5 years ago when that little flu virus happened that was way overblown by the governments and media, right?
Yeah,
A lot of people just said, trust the experts. On our side, people said, yeah, I'm not going to take some goofy vaccine that isn't properly tested. I'm going to do my own research, going to use my empiricism. And many, many people said, you're not supposed to do your own research. You have to trust the experts. And
mm.
a lot of people say that about many things that they don't really understand and they don't even try to understand. Maybe even think it blasphemous to assume they could understand it. They defer to the
Well,
modern priestly caste of experts, right? So that's sort
right,
of a secular religion where,
right.
yeah, where you have an
But
established
I think
hierarchy
that's
of
I think that's
priests.
I think that's inherent in any religion is that you can't really question it too much, right? Or
Yeah,
most of them. If you really try, they cannot be examined too closely. Let's say, not in a Lovecraftian sense. Well, it's sort of Lovecraftian sense, but like in the sense of
definitely not from the position of your average layperson, right? If you're a philosopher, obviously you can ask some questions, or if you're some kind of theologian, you can ask some questions. But if you're just your
well, you don't
average
have
Joe,
to be. You don't have to be those things. I don't I like you can be a layperson and ask those questions. I think you don't have to be like I don't not to be a credentialist and say you must be a
no,
PhD
no, no,
philosopher.
but it's you don't have to be. But the general idea among the adherents is that yeah, only the experts or the priests actually know what it's all
Right.
about. I don't have to know it. I just have to follow what they say. Which
Right.
can come, of course, with the implication that if you are questioning this, you're a heretic, obviously.
Right.
And
Well, okay. So
different.
you're talking about the secular religion, and that's your modern example, and that's true. But I'm
That's a
not
modern example,
100%
and
convinced
but
we
it
can
would
call that
also
religion.
apply to several historical flavors of particularly Christianity and Islam, right? The big monotheist religions where if you disagree with things, you become a heretic, but there's also splinter movements, right? Heresies that grow because a lot of people join it. Then you get obviously the big shift with the Reformation, where lots of people believe one or two guys who have criticisms about the mainstream Catholic religion, right? So now you got the Lutherans, now you got the Calvinists. So the dynamics are usually there's a big established framework of beliefs, and then someone comes up with perhaps an offshoot of that framework, and he gets enough followers, and that spawns a new religion. So what we can look into nowadays is what kinds of new frameworks are perhaps being worked on, and are
Yeah,
there any
definitely.
charismatic leaders who people could attach themselves to? And I'm not really seeing it so far,
No.
at least not to any bigger extent.
Well, it's different than it was. Let's say back in Jim Jones' era, someone can come along like that and form a cult quite easily. But now that's much more difficult in the internet era because back then he could form a little local group, and everybody's hearing about him by word of mouth, going down to his church, hearing his sermons, and getting roped into it that way. Nowadays, if someone has a popular sermon, someone's taking off, people are following him. It'll be online, and everybody, even from the most lowly idiot to the most intellectual braino, can see and examine his speeches and what he's saying and make comments all day long. So it's not so easy to form a little niche group that's totally cut off from everybody else. It's almost impossible, I think. Is it? Someone somewhere is filming almost everything all day long.
I
So
guess
it's not as
somewhere
easy, right?
in a very rural province, you might be able to do it if you're deliberately
Even there, the internet is
aiming
everywhere.
at it.
People recording things like unless you had a total law that you're not allowed to use the internet or record anything, that would be maybe a way. And if so, then these things might be around and we never hear about them. More often, you hear like little cults are formed. Like you're talking about, this is the whole weird nature of this whole business, because a lot of these things become culty without having a religious basis at all, or a spiritual basis even. Like some of these groups that get together for the little sex orgies. I was just listening to a case. It's a murder case, but it basically devolved the murder case of the sheriff shot a judge in the courthouse, and it all turns out because I didn't finish the whole story, but because there was orgies of sex going on in this courthouse where they were basically the judge was having sex with all the inmates, female. Ooh, I think I froze for a minute. Am I
You
frozen?
did, but your voice kept
Hello?
going. Just the image froze.
Or is he frozen?
Testing. Hello. Yeah, you're frozen right now from my perspective.
Hold on, my voice worked, but the rest didn't. Is that what you said?
Yeah, your voice did work, but the image froze. Not sure exactly what's going on here. Probably some trickster deity messing with the talk. Or it's just Mossad. Uh, okay, I see you're back. I don't hear anything. Do I? No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That was me.
Yes.
That was me muting the mic. Sorry. Now, if that
I
happens
hear
again,
you now.
if that happens again, this is part of the. I was whining right before we went live that I was having some issues, and I can see it possibly happening again. Hopefully, it doesn't. If it does, I'll switch to my phone, and we'll get this finished
All right.
one way or the other.
I'm just going to blame Mossad for it. They don't want us to shine a light on this.
Yeah, Mossad. That's it. But
But
this is so hot. This is going to hit the internet like millions of views, and they just can't let it get out there. Our little personal musical music. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the courthouse orgy theme.
Right.
So that was almost becoming like a cult of just a sex cult. Maybe over time it could have become esoteric and a true cult. But these things don't even have necessarily. I'm just saying, the point of that was a mythical, religious, spiritual basis. These things can form for other abstract and bizarre reasons. People come together and decide things are going to be this way, and often the basis is some horrible criminal and all sorts of reasons. Like even if they say you were talking about Mossad and other mafia-like groups, let's say, with a religious affiliation, a lot of them are kind of like literally mafia. That also has a spiritual aspect attached to it. A racial mafia, I guess. I guess mafias arguably is a racial thing. But it's funny. It's a funny business. But what was my point? I had an overall point there. What did I want to make? Just that
I think
religion
the
thing.
overall point was, groups can form and they just do things and form their own rules. I guess that.
Well, there's a bit. Groups can form and they just do things. So we've really solved the mystery there, haven't we? Yes. But it's like
when we look at something like
everyone should have some awareness that all religions do evolve and change and have a kind of morphing natural selection to them. Like none of them stay static.
Yeah.
And they do change. So like you were talking about Protestantism and how it split almost immediately into how many things did it split into?
Different groups. Yeah. About
how many were there? Like there's fucking Mormons, Calvinists, whatever.
Nowadays, there's way too many, especially overseas in the Americas. But over here, there's basically just Lutherans, the Reforms, and that's sort of it in Europe, I guess.
Are Lutherans and Reforms? Okay, so you got your own German ones that are different. I know Lutheran.
The Lutherans and the Reforms are the Calvinists, basically.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
And I guess there's the Swiss guys, the Zwinglians, I guess.
What are they? I don't know.
Zwingli was another reformer like Calvin, and usually they're lumped together, but I guess they're their own flavor.
I don't think Calvin was very good. When I read about Calvin, I don't get a good. I do like Luther. I don't like, I'm not a fan of Protestantism.
I would agree. I like Luther. I do not like Calvin at all. He has some very kooky ideas.
Yeah.
Getting back to kooky ideas, the example you mentioned was the whole Jim Jones thing, right? With their temple. And that kind of cult, that's really inconsequential in the big picture, right? Like it's not going to pave any path to the future. It's just a bunch of guys doing a cult and then they kill each other. And that's it. Cult gone. Nothing will develop.
Well, it was gaining influence. I think they were getting, pretty big. Like they got shut down on purpose for getting so crazy and big. I think, it's not like they weren't without. Of all the cults that they got anywhere, they were actually getting pretty big. You can say that, but maybe you feel it was futile. It's a futile evolution.
Yeah, I feel like those are small evolutionary dead ends, more like actual big movements that can lead to something. I'd say the latest one that actually became a force to be reckoned with is Mormonism, right? Founded in the 19th century.
Right.
Those are a legitimate offshoot. They're growing. They're big. They are also very local, right? They started out as centered on certain U.S. states. I think it's Utah mostly.
Yeah.
And
that's sort of like this Protestantism. It's like Protestantism with aliens, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure Isn't there some space
I
on
don't think it's got aliens in it. That's Scientology, the alien stuff.
No, but there's something
It's
about
more
other
like,
planets in Mormonism. There's something about
oh
like
yeah,
planets.
they have the thing that other worlds exist as part of their theology, and
Yeah.
like if you die, you go into your own world. So some people speculate that there's a lot of good Mormon sci-fi and fantasy writers because they all grow up with the belief that they're going to build their own world when they die. So, gotta get some practice while you live.
Well,
Uh,
who's a Mormon sci-fi writer?
Brandon Sanderson,
All right, okay,
he's a Mormon.
all right. But you mentioned Scientology, so Scientology is a very big,
Yeah,
more recent, even more recent. Probably that is probably the biggest of the newest cults. No,
that's the one
is
we
there
should
new?
probably look at the closest
Yeah,
ourselves,
and it's not Christian.
considering we
It's
are
not
pulp
Christian.
writers.
It's not related to
Right?
to
No,
any
no, no.
Christianity or anything. It's totally like from ground up zero.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that was just a guy, L. Ron Hubbard, who
another science fiction guy, L.
yes,
Ron
the
Hubbard.
sci-fi
Yeah.
writer who ended up turning his ideas into a religion, and then people followed it. So, fellow sci-fi writers, here's an example. That's what we can do
We
to shape
we're
the
like
future of
prophets. We are
religion.
prophets. Yeah, yeah. Well, we have we can see we're the type of people that look at like big picture stories of like imagining what happens to whole peoples and the future of the planet and this and that. And I guess when you see the influence of religion, how important it is. You tend to like become a bit of a student of it, like I am. I make these posts about it frequently. I've tried to make my position clear that I was raised Catholic, and I don't feel I can ever say I have all these pagan leanings. Basically, just from reading the classics, from reading Marcus Aurelius and Plotinus, and I read all those books, and it turned me into this pagan mindset. And what can I say? If there's any kind of, it's the most rational religion I've ever found. But I was raised Catholic, so there's no escaping it. So I don't like shit on Christianity or anything like that. But if I just postulate something about religion, just out of pure interest, just saying, or make a note on something Evelyn said about this or that, people just attack from one side or the other, like, you can't say that. And it's very, obviously close to their hearts. And then you can see why, because these are true believers trying to, they're trained to attack any questioning, even though you just want to speak about it philosophically. Or I would have thought more people would be open to, even if they're true believers, talking out of interest. Oh, isn't that interesting? This and that. As long as you present it. I try to present it, objectively. But this is part of why I want to talk about this, is because it's so interesting. And it is interesting if you can step back from even your own belief and try to observe, just postulate and observe and think about it.
Yeah.
And the broader picture. This is what the whole point of the video is.
Comparative religious studies angle on the whole thing.
Yeah, just to see then, as we said, if we think of it as an evolving thing that's there and always changes, and not that we can even guess what the next thing is going to be or anything, but you can make educated guesses, I guess. You see what works and what doesn't, and what's likely to happen. Like, it does not say, for instance, a lot of people will not like to hear this. I would say it's certainly not impossible at this point that Europe could end up Islamic, right? It's like not anyone's favorite.
Yeah, it's not my favorite choice, but it's not
it's not out of the realms of possibility.
Option. It's something we gotta fight back against.
Yeah.
So
that's on the table. That's a possibility. But so say if we did turn Islamic, there's a very high chance we would sort of change it in a whiter way.
Yes.
I don't know.
I think a good example to look at in that case is actually what's it called? Bosnia? Yeah, I think the Bosnians are that Balkan country that's Muslim.
Yeah.
And they don't really give a shit about things that mainstream Islam bans. Like, they still eat pork, they still drink alcohol, because they're Balkan people. They don't give a shit. They just do that. But they also don't have quite as much of a ban on images as mainstream Muslims do. So it's a very Europeanized flavor of Islam. When you look at the Turkish flavor, what the Ottomans had, they're not quite as European, obviously, because they're Turks, but they
They're
also have their own
they're as close as
flavor.
an Easterling can get. The Turks are as close
Yeah,
as yeah. So it's another Europeanish example, I guess.
and it's
And
also
I've never been to
less
Turkey. I know there's a
radical
lot of
than mainstream Islam. So
right. Like you're in Germany. There's a good few Turks around there. I've never been to Turkey. I actually want to go. I would like to go.
Me too.
What do
I
you?
haven't been, but it's a country I
Yeah,
would definitely visit. I've been
yeah.
to
I might.
Armenia.
Oh, Armenia. You've been to Armenia? Is that what you said?
I've been to Armenia, yeah, which borders Turkey, and
And
I
what was
mean
that like?
they're an Eastern Christian place, right, with their
Hmm.
own offshoot of Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah.
So again, they do their own thing, and this is what tends to happen to big universalist religions like that, Islam, Christianity. They all have this idea that they're the universal truth, and you're going to convert to it. But whenever they do that to an entire people, those people are going to adapt it a little, right? They're going to change it a little to suit local flavors. That's why Eastern Orthodoxy feels Slavic, while Catholicism feels more Italic, right?
Mm.
It's just naturally what happens to a big religion. It's going to
Yeah.
be assimilated by
Yeah.
whichever
And
people embrace it. And
and
I
this is
guess the
this is it.
same would happen with secular religions if those one day develop into a more codified religious framework.
Right. Yes, and this is what I mean about everyone thinks their religion is this static thing, and it's always been this way, and all that. Like even that is a great example. Even of the ones that are like well established, the strong monotheist ones that are still with us, like they really have changed a lot. I know those Balkan ones. I knew a crazy Balkan chick. Oh, she was fucking nuts. Bosniak, whatever, and she was like a European woman. She was even like showing her ass online, or I don't know about drink, but in the end, she was, I will say, her whole end goal was to draw men in and convert them to Islam. I know that. I found out that was her, like, what she was doing, what she was like talking behave like more of a Western, but they seem to be really into Sufism. The Armenians like that kind of stuff. So many of them, I think, too, which is Sufism is probably the mildest form of Islam, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's the
Um,
more philosophical direction of it, or school, which actually has some good ideas, many taken from ancient Greek philosophy,
yeah, like all good
um,
ideas, like all good ideas come from ancient
some
Greek
taken
philosophy. There's
from
plenty of
ancient Persian stuff, right? There's a Zoroastrian influence there too, which again, interesting religion because it's ethnic, right?
Mhm.
Zoroastrianism is not practiced outside of Persian people, essentially.
No, I've seen them try to like talk us into it on the Telegram. Iranians come on there and like this is the Roman paganism's not good enough. You got to be this and that, and it's like okay, well, I have respect for it, but this is not our tradition. It's quite alien, and what can I say? That's mostly I'll be like upset that we're bad mouthing the Romans. I'll be like, don't ever say that. Not on my channel.
The ancient Persian Roman conflict keeps on going, apparently.
Oh, it does. It does. But that's the thing. So whenever you want to discuss any of this thing, someone's going to get mad somewhere. Somewhere as we speak, someone is seething about this. White Dogger, she says, "What is your zodiac sign?" Or Pisces is my zodiac sign.
I'm a
I
Leo.
believe, and you're a Leo, yeah. Interesting, cool Mormon cybros, yeah. There are some in Hawaii, but not as strong as in Utah. There's Mormons in Hawaii. Why would they be there? Orson Scott Card is Mormon, I think. Do you know him, Orson Scott Card?
Oh yeah, I've heard of the guy. I don't think I've read something of him yet. Is that the guy who wrote Ender's Game?
Yeah,
I
I don't
think
know.
that's
Maybe he'll
yeah,
say. So
that's
October says, I got within 10 pages of the end of Battlefield Earth and just couldn't finish it. Threw the book across the room. I never tried to read it. Did you?
I
Oh, the
never
shitty
did
movie.
too. Apparently, they made a really shitty movie about it.
Oh, it's so
And it
bad.
was a really
It's
shit movie
so
adaptation.
amazingly bad. I couldn't believe it.
But L. Ron Hubbard, before he did the whole Scientology stuff and then Battlefield Earth, he wrote for Pulp magazine. So I would actually be interested in checking out his pulp stories because those must be better, right?
Yeah, he was famous in
what
his
he
own right
does,
before,
what
so he must.
what his foundation does, I really like that. The L. Ron Hubbard Foundation, which is financed with Scientology money, hosts every year. I think they do a contest for new authors where you can submit sci-fi and fantasy stories only if you're like a new unpublished author. And the best ones get selected into an anthology, and you all get flown out into the US and get a big ceremony and stuff like that. So it's called Writers of the Future. And
Wow.
some big names actually got their first published short story this way. Patrick Rothfuss, the guy who wrote Name of the Wind, and doesn't seem to be able to finish his third book or write it at all. That
He
guy had
lost it.
his short story published in Writers of the Future. So some big names in there. It's a pretty good way to use your money from a religious foundation supporting the
Yeah.
arts.
No shit. Yeah, we should look into that. We should get a grant from these people
This is why I
for our
will
stuff.
never
Like,
fully hate Scientology, despite them being weird kooky guys. They're doing great stuff. They're financing the arts. I'm very much in
yeah,
support
I
of
find
that.
them very odd. It's not like I'm going to join them because I know there's people, certain people. Like my wife is totally freaked out about them. She's like hates them. Like, oh, she hears their sees about it. I think it's kooky, and I think it's. I just view it like I view any cult or religion. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. Doesn't bother me in particular. But like, and that is great. And I don't know how they do so well. But is it an illusion they do so well? Did they just have so many sort of celebrities and people in California with money that they
I
appear
guess
so?
it's half half, right? They got some good celebrity representation, and guess they got some big growth back in the 90s and early 2000s around that time.
Right.
So
Well, because even here
once once
they
you've
have a
grown,
center.
you're there, right? Once you've grown, you're here to stay.
Once you've grown, you have to stay.
Once you've grown, you're here to stay. Is
Once you've
what I
grown,
would
you're here to stay.
say about
Well,
religions like.
what do they really? I don't know how. I can't see them withholding against, say, like if we imagine again, say the eventual if Islam takes over Europe in some, or if Scientology came up against one of the monotheisms where all the proles believe if they don't do everything they're told they're going to go to hell, versus Scientology where you just sort of like what it's like a recording of your psychology
Um,
to bribe you with or something.
I
It's not as threatening.
I
It's
looked
not
into
as
it
much
a
power.
little bit at some point just to see what they actually believe in. I
Yeah.
think they do have salvation theories. Like if you do the stuff that's in the Scientology books, your soul is going to get freed. Stuff like that, obviously, right? So when you have that, you do have a draw, right? For people who want to get saved. So ultimately, it's for that basis of average followers who join religions because they want to get saved. All you need is a good hook, right? And I guess Scientology has one, otherwise it wouldn't have been able to attract so many members.
Yeah, it does have a good hook, and it's got money. I guess money is one of the big things, but yeah, and I guess it's relatively inoffensive because it's not like Jim Jones and some of the others. It's kooky and all, but it's not like
Yeah,
I don't
they're
know.
not gonna make you kill yourself. That's for sure.
Did, did you ever see that vid? That was it a Netflix documentary about the crowd with the sort of ashram in somewhere in Middle America, and they started going kind of poisoning the local food supply and stuff. Shit, what was that called?
Oh, I
You know,
no, I'm not aware of that.
Yosho. Yosho was his name. I think he's some kind of Indian guru guy, and he set up like one of these, transcendental meditation places. So all the local white people started dressing all in like purple clothes. It's sort of like like what George Harrison and like what happened in the '60s with all the bands. They all started following gurus, right? and this was one in the 80s or 90s. I forget what it was called. There's an amazing little short documentary on it. But they eventually started like being at war with the local townsfolk because they had this compound of these people and it was growing. It was huge, and they were armed like with, I think they had like AK-47s. You know, they were ready to defend themselves, and they eventually started like poison. They were at war with the local townspeople and started going in and poisoning their buffets in their restaurants and stuff. And that's what shut them down in the end. But I don't know. That was a good one too for it to see, and that was just like your typical hippie guy, you know, getting into this guru stuff, having group sex with like, you know, as they always do, and some sort of communal living hippie communal living thing, which is they always seem to end in this way: the communal living, group sex, the guru guy sexes all the women, takes your wife, all of them, end in this way, which is funny. But
yeah, pretty much.
I don't know. I don't think the Scientologists did. Well, maybe they did. I don't know.
No, probably not. I think that was mostly just L. Ron Hubbard doing his thing with writing his own religion, right? Being a sci-fi writer and raking in the money from his adherents.
Yeah, but whether or not they have a basis in Jesus or Christianity is also besides the point. Because those
no,
guys
they
were
do
just
not.
yeah, that was purely Hindu hippie thing. But many do have a Christian thing, or they cite Jesus as somehow part of their pantheon, their prophet. Just like what's the weird guy with the glasses that played guitar, and they burned it all down. Also in America, shit. What do they call themselves? Was it Branch Davidians or something?
Oh yeah, Branch Davidians. Those
that
were
guy's
the
name?
guys
Remember they
who got cooked in Waco, right?
Yeah, that crowd.
Yeah, that's the Branch
So
Davidians.
that was basically the same shit as those Hindu guru guys, except they were Christians of some kind, supposedly. Anyways, Jesus was involved.
Yeah.
But it's just like Jesus can be used as a totem for certain people, as a launch point into any kind of culty behavior. If you sort of adopt them and use them and say, "Oh, I'm speaking for Jesus." David Koresh, October says, "Thank you." Yes, David Koresh was his name. There was a lot more in the pre-internet days. I think the internet has put an end to some of the, like, in some ways they proliferate more, but they can't go as far as they used to. It's like almost every
it made it
influencer that someone
easier
follows
for every dude to just put out his own variation, right?
Yeah.
Like you start up a new cult, you're like, hey, I have a completely new interpretation of Jesus. And with the internet, within 5 minutes, there's 10 guys who say, ha, but there's a flaw and I have a better interpretation. And boom, instant splinter groups.
Yeah. I told you about the cult I tried to start, did I? Did I ever tell you?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. And it actually worked pretty well. Too well. I was thinking of trying it again, and that's on a smaller scale. I'm pretty sure I will, just through a kind of members area thing on the website I'm building right now. But yeah, I know it did work very well. It was actually, the only problem was it was too much work for one guy, and then I would try to get other people to help me. I was like, look at this thing I'm doing. Like, I need help with admin to organize this or something. But nobody actually wanted to do any work. So I thought, I better abandon this. And at the time also, there was some other stuff going on, and it didn't seem like a good look to be starting a cult, let's say. But it was just an experiment in this, creating a cult-like thing, and it did work immediately. It was very. I got a lot of applications, really more than I expected. So much so I had to stop it because I couldn't manage it as a full-time. It wasn't like a job, it was like a little experiment. But I'd like to try it again. So it's really as simple as saying, oh, like that one I started did have a kind of pagan spiritual basis of sorts, but it was mostly like an organization, almost mafia-ish, let's say, just as an experiment in getting something that would be self-growing, so that everybody who joined had a certain amount of duties. Yeah, their part of their duties for joining was to tell somebody else or to make flyers or spread the message. And it was working. It was working. If I had been serious about it, and if I'd been like Mr. David Koresh or somebody, I would have like hired people and got the admin going and organized all these people and started taking ties. But I'm going to try it again soon on a very, very small scale. Nothing too grand. I just see like but just like treat it in a culty way, like make proclamations and things. I just think it'd be funny.
Why
Not
not?
yeah.
You can just see where it goes.
Hmm.
Maybe you're going to be the next big cult leader, and then
Well, just a purely internet thing. I'm not going to start like stealing anyone's wives or anything. I'm just going to like
right.
just to see like, because I understand that things just work this way. Cults are everywhere all the time. Even like I was going to say like this is with the internet we have like you can't get to a David Koresh level very easily in like having a compound and all these people with nobody ever hearing about it, especially if you've got like interesting kooky beliefs, which is really the best thing about having a cult, right?
Yeah,
But
once you do that,
it's
nowadays
so much,
you're
it's so
instantly
much
going
harder
to
to get
be
that going with everybody
tracked
watching it. But at the
down.
same time,
Yeah,
like you said, every influencer is almost at a potential cult, person right there as well. And even some inane, stupid thing. That was another show I saw. One of these, I don't know if it was Netflix, probably Netflix again. I don't know what the fuck. One of these ones, and it was like somebody started. It was a business, some guy doing it like an online pyramid scheme business. And was it to do with real estate or something? It was just totally business. But eventually, the people he hired and enlisted, he started treating in a culty fashion, and eventually it was a cult. And they were like, he was turning them into transgenders to marry each other because they were all women or something, and there was no men. And that's a funny one too.
to be
But I think
fair, whenever I look at LinkedIn users, each of them feels like either a cult leader or a cult member.
oh, they're
The
shitty
cult of
stupid
business.
talk. They're shitty permanent advertising talk. Like imagine talking like your business, like imagine talking permanently all day long, like it's your CV, and you're like, I don't even do that on my CV. I actually had great success when I first got out of art school. I will tell you, I made the stupidest, shittiest fucking resume anyone's ever seen. It was like a pamphlet. I mean, it was this is for graphic design jobs, right? But it was just like photos of me in like a dumpster and like jumping around and making these stupid ass quotes like that didn't mean anything. Like I don't remember what they were. Things like was it quotes by the Sheridan guy? Oh fuck, what was it? Just like dumbass shit, like big boasting proclamations, like I've got the skills to pay the bills, and it's like me jumping out of a dumpster, like flying through the air, like stupid shit like this, like just little and like shitty little Xerox photocopy booklet thing. And like everybody I showed it to laughed their ass off and basically offered me a job. I remember that at the time. So that
Yeah,
LinkedIn shit, you can
yeah.
just
For graphic designer, I'd absolutely take that over your regular boring CV.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I like to synergize the like the stupid ass talk. Oh, and imagine doing that. Imagine going to a platform to do that even more, like a social media thing, to talk in like a
Natural born
corporate.
slaves. The thing we talked about last time, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Normals, natural born slaves. That's another topic. I'm basically my online life is talking about normals or religion. It seems like I guess I'm just interested in these things. What's my excuse?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I guess to go back to the core thing that we are trying to discuss, I guess the potential development of religion and
Right.
where it's going to go, right? You can look
Oh,
at things like, I don't know, maybe the LinkedIn guys are going to
maybe the
found a
what?
cult of those
Maybe the what?
LinkedIn guys,
Oh,
the LinkedIn guys, right?
I thought you were
Are
saying
going
the
to
Incas
found
for a minute there. The Incas, maybe the Incas have the answer. Like, oh Jesus.
maybe they're going to found a cult of HR one day, right? The
Yeah.
the Human
Quetzalcoatl, the
Resources Church.
head of HR in the afterlife.
Like I think a source of religions or religion-like organizations for the future might actually be found in social movements, in ideologies, and any sort of group, right, that has some sort of staying power and would, in a way, codify its belief system for the future and turn into something that people are going to keep joining. When you look at how those leftists tick, right? Communism is a religion at this point. It's a secular religion. They believe in verifiably false things and follow their prophets of Marx and Lenin or something. So you have
Well, modern
the whole
communists, modern communists.
structure,
Sorry,
right?
go
The
on.
whole structure of prophets, religious texts, beliefs that you cannot question, all of that, except you have no metaphysics. That's the only thing these secular religions lack.
You have no metaphysics. Yeah. Well, they do have they have their belief science stuff, and there's a certain metaphysic to that. I guess it was very nihilist. It's just like, again, you don't question. You can never question the reason for things springing into being or anything like the root of philosophy type questions. But you have to accept a nihilistic answer for everything. That it's so limited. Oh shit. And weird, but yeah, it's the same kind of thing where you don't question. Everyone gets into this don't question phase. I never have been in a don't. I don't think. Maybe I have. Is there anything that is too taboo for me to question? I wonder that I'm going to get upset about. Would you say that? I don't know. What would it be?
No, I wouldn't say there is.
I mean, I wouldn't. If you were trying to tell me, like, say, pedos and serial killers are great, I'd be like, yeah, fuck you. Like, no, there's no chance. So I guess that's something. Is that or what? I don't know. Even then, I might listen to your supposed argument.
I guess in that case, it comes down to principles rather than.
Well, the root of all principles are a belief of some kind, sort of. Although, like oh Jesus, there's so many depths of questions here. Like, if you have a moral opinion of something, it's not necessarily so much a question of a moral belief as it is experience as well. If you know that a pedo and a serial killer is just a selfish loser, taking things from people, innocent people, and that's a great crime, and you know that from experience. You don't have to be told that because of the laws of the Bible I mean, that counts for something.
I think that's the idea of there's just principles that are based on self-evident truths, and certain religious frameworks or belief structures can actually counter those natural facts. Like, a lot of people on the left would actually sympathize with the pedo or say, well, maybe the serial killer was just a damaged person, right? Bullshit like that. They're going to make excuses and then try to direct the pity of the onlooker towards the perpetrator and say, this guy did terrible things because his mind is fucked up or because society was bad. And right, that's what you often hear from the left side, usually. Which, I don't know, I guess that is also a sort of belief that you should always side with the wretched rather than the pure.
Maybe. I saw a woman recently, a woman psychologist talking about fixing serial killers, that they could like, she was all excited about I forget what it was. She had some idea of some way that they would fix these people and correct their psychology. But it's like, once you've tortured to death 12 kids, that's it. Fix them? What the hell for? You have to kill them.
I know a good fix. It's made of rope, and
yeah, you can't. There's no recovering from certain actions, no matter what. You can't just turn them into suddenly a rainbow lollipop Care Bear person and be like, oh, I'm fine now. You don't. There's certain things you do not just walk away from, recover from.
The funniest case, actually, and now we're going way off topic, but I think it's interesting.
Well, all this is under the banner of religion in a way.
There's this guy, you probably know the case in Germany, right? I think it happened in the 90s or something. There was this guy who ate a dude, right?
Yes. The guy who volunteered to be eaten.
Yes, the guy who volunteered to be eaten, and then he just got eaten. And the guy who ate him was jailed because obviously he killed a guy, and it was a big question among judges. What do we actually do here? Because the guy was voluntarily killed and eaten. And this guy, he's in jail, and he's become a vegetarian because when he doesn't want to eat human meat anymore, and whenever he looks at meat, he remembers eating a dude, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not that kind of guy anymore."
Oh,
And they actually just let him go
what?
on
He's free.
free. No, he's not free. He's in jail, but
Okay.
they often let him out to just go on walks through town on his own,
Mhm.
and he comes back on his own, like because he's
What?
repenting. He's yeah, no, I belong in jail because I did a terrible thing, and I don't want to eat people anymore. But that's where I am now.
That is
So
that's a bit
that
crazy.
is
That doesn't
yes,
sound safe. I wouldn't be doing that. You can't trust these people. Once someone's proven that they're psychopath, if you read it, if you learn, look into any of this true crime stuff and how psychopaths actually behave. I mean, they will lie, and lie,
yeah. But I
and
guess this guy is the exception because he only killed a guy who volunteered for it, right? So he's
I
not the
believe
serial
they,
killer.
I believe they ate. I believe they ate the guy's penis together. He cut off
Yes,
the guy's dick and cooked it,
yes.
and they ate it together, and
Because
then
the
he
guy
killed.
who was eaten had this as his specific sexual fetish.
I mean,
And
sexual.
they met through the internet on
How sexy can that be? You haven't got a dick to. You haven't got a dick to get hard anymore. What's so sexy about
yeah,
that?
that's the weird part, right? But they met on the internet on a forum, I think, that was specifically about cannibalism fetishism. They met there and just started chatting, and at one point they were like, you know what, let's just make this a real thing. So they made
So
a real.
okay, just eat me. See, this is my other fascination is normal. How credulous normals are, and how they can be talked into anything, really anything, especially if it's kind of like weak and shitty and selfish. Boner appetit, John Gora says. Yes. Hold on, someone's got a question here. Kane, I've never seen this before. Would you prefer your son to be Ted Bundy or a rapper wigger with tattoos? I reckon we'd all choose Ted Bundy.
Yes.
So, so I don't believe in morals, only principles. Actually, no, I would not choose Ted Bundy. The wigger is even redeemable. The wigger could be like, you could teach him to stop being a wigger. Ted Bundy, you can't do anything. You got to kill him. That would be my view. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I guess ultimately the thing that weighs heaviest is deeds, not words. And if you just become a weirdo who has weird cultural taste and talks like a retard, that's just words, right? But if you actually commit murders, that's deeds. And deeds are harder to weigh up
Yeah,
for than words.
yeah, like innocent women. You ever see that one? Like there was one while he was raping her, he like bit a chunk out of her. You ever see that? He like bit
What?
a giant
Oh,
chunk out of her while he was raping her. Yeah,
yeah,
that
no.
guy was that guy was
I
fucking
do not
animal.
know this one.
He was a terrible, terrible animal. That guy. He should have been tortured slowly. Is what he really deserved. He should have had a medieval torture. Seriously, it's actually very sad
Yeah, I
that he
think
didn't.
the Assyrians had some good execution methods for people like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, what can we conclude? What can we say? We're off the topic a little bit, but it is all related though. This morality, religion, and where we are. Like, look at me. Like, I'm not even so I can say I have these pagan views, this Catholic background. The things I care about are very plain and obvious to me, and I do have a strict moral sense of it. Even though I have my actual religious belief, you might say, is sort of syncretic, and in that sense, I know it sounds fucking new agey or something to say you're pagan or whatever else, but like, what would you say about yourself? I don't even know. What do you
Um,
call yourself?
I guess I'd say traditionalist pagan with
Really?
certain esoteric undertones.
And how did you reach that conclusion? Would you say that because you weren't
Uh,
raised that way?
nah,
I don't think
I
there's no
guess
way. Were
also
you?
No, I was raised Lutheran actually,
right?
and I discovered the Nordic sagas, the Germanic writings, in my late teens, and they spoke to me. And then later I read Plato, various Greek philosophers, Greek myths, and it's just all closer to the blood, right, than Christianity. And I've also read in my 20s a bunch of esoteric stuff like Evola, Miguel Serrano, things like that.
Serrano is insane.
Um, Serrano is insane, but you know what they say? When you start out reading him, you read him literally, but
Yeah.
when you become more adept and delve more into him, you start reading him metaphorically. But once you
Mm.
fully understand him, you take him literally again.
I must read it again then. Well, he has some amazingly great, like excellent propositions and ideas. That's for sure. That what was
And
the one
yeah,
about?
ultimately, I think faith should be connected to blood.
Yeah, it should absolutely, and that's true. This is the problem. We made this decision ourselves. Again, this is for me like continually arguing with Christians and pagans on the internet. Frankly, more so the Christians, because even though I don't, it's such a hard. I get trapped in this thing. It's such a dilemma. I don't want to be against them. I don't want to argue with them even really, but they're always the ones that
Yeah, I
fight
tend
against
to
the
get in
proposition.
arguments with Christians over religious matters, but I I didn't think I would throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say, because there are elements of, particularly of medieval Christianity, right, that
Yeah,
still preserved aspects of our racial soul within the Christian framework. And I don't think those have to be thrown out. I do enjoy medieval Christian architecture. I like cathedrals. Gothic
yes,
cathedrals are very beautiful monuments created by our
some of the
people.
best. Yeah, for
That
sure.
is architecture that was
Yeah,
made by the Germans, the French, the English. That is not architecture that would have
yeah.
been made by any other Christians on in other places of the world. Like when I visited
Well,
Armenia, they have
okay.
very interesting churches, right? They have very
Oh,
interesting
I've seen some of those. Yeah,
architecture that
unique, totally unique.
feels
Yeah,
local. It's their own architecture. So that is
yeah,
again an aspect of religion. You build like the architecture that your religious buildings use. It
yeah.
comes from blood, right? And the important thing
That's
is that
it has to be.
a religion that arises within the people, ultimately, what it has to do is that it has to serve those people and not lead them onto the wrong path. And my
Yes.
main issue with modern Christianity in particular is that it does often lead people to the wrong path. We have many Christian organizations who support refugees and stuff like that from foreign countries. They support the idea of race mixing. They support the idea of pumping your money into foreign countries when you would actually need it more at home,
Yeah, it's
right?
charity abroad. Yeah.
They put that element of altruism that is inherent in the Christian
Yes.
faith
Yes.
outward when it would be much better served inward. And then it extends mercy to people who don't deserve it. Like when Erika Kirk forgave the killer of her husband. I
Yes.
did not agree with that. I do not think
No.
that was a good idea. I do not think
No.
he deserves forgiveness.
No. No. I'm so sick of that forgiveness stuff. That is the problem with it. Okay, let's look at the pros and cons of it. Let's say as it exists even now. There's a very big pro you're not mentioning, which is that like those Abrahamic religions, their entirety of their strength and their weakness rests on the extremes of their slightly schizophrenic promises of what's going to happen to your life in your mind when you die, and that if you don't obey the rules, you will suffer an eternity in hell versus a paradise. And so, that's very schizophrenic subjective thing. It's like and that's a great strength to have. So, particularly on proles and people that don't think for themselves and people that don't want to question things. Frankly, I'm not a I was going to say I'm not a classist, even though I believe in a strict caste system, including, as we've discussed, slavery. But I'm not a classist in that I'm not. I believe in the caste system only because everyone should have a role and a job provided them according to what they're best at, and this is just an obvious. Like, I believe in traditional statecraft, basically. Oh shit! Now I'm losing my. What was my original point? What was I getting at? Shit. What was I talking about?
The strengths of the
Oh, yeah.
Christian
Okay, so this is the great strength of it, is this threat, and so you can say that to be effective in getting the people in the masses organized behind morality, which is largely good. Apart from, I mean, now it's worse than ever because the forgiveness thing has come to the forefront. Before, they weren't so forgiving. In medieval times, even the forgiveness thing is very recent, that they forgave everybody. The killer of their child is suddenly forgiven. Like, this is very recent. I don't know where the fuck this has come from. That's very bad. But like that essential message of universalism, everyone's equal, all the races are welcome, and the forgiveness thing are very bad. That's all that is the ultimate dark side of the turn the other cheek doctrine, the Sermon on the Mount, which is frankly just about the only philosophy found. This is the other issue with the Bible, is that I have, is that, like, if this is God's final message to mankind and everything, why is there so little actual philosophy or anything in it? Things of incredible value that we get from the Greeks, who were pagans. We're supposed to hate them in terms of like civilization and everything else. Like, what's in the Bible? It's just a bunch of decrees.
Yeah,
Do
it's
this or else.
basically just a book of Jewish mythology with
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I'm trying to balance out the good and bad points. So sorry. I'm trying to actually say the good points. Forgive me. Sorry. Let me just finish this. So, because you can say that is a very good point, that because of the threat of heaven and hell, etc., works excellently on the proles, people at large will follow the edicts. And apart from their forgiveness and apart from the universalism, they're pretty good. It's all like, don't covet your neighbor's wife, and general kind of rules for being civilized and being fertile as well. Right? Pretty good in those regards, in terms of like family life and what else? A few things. These are I just wanted to summarize the good points. So the negative points we already also touched on, and that is the problem with that. And so the negative points are coming to the fore more than ever lately because of this forgiveness.
I think that's the important question with the Christian framework.
Yeah.
Which direction is it going to develop into further? Right? Are we going to get medieval crusaders back, as some LARPers on the internet would like? Or are we going to further slide down the forgiveness track?
Yeah, it seems to me, well, you and I made our decision, and we feel it's going to go the forgiveness route. Right?
I would say that's what the mainstream expressions of it are more aiming into. Yes.
You can tell the truth. You can tell people, you're talking to people who've read Plato, because they can never say anything absolutely, which is good. You can never trust anybody who says something absolutely. There's always got to be a caveat. Like, well, yeah.
It's going somewhere, but there's other, like, there's splinter groups that go in other directions, right? And it has always been like this with that religion. It's splinter group, splinter group, splinter group, and the one time that they managed to keep that under control was the Middle Ages, where the Catholic Church had state power and was invested in kings across Europe, so they could apply local state powers too. And nowadays, they no longer have that, right? They have no real centralization. So there's just going to be splinter groups, and they're going to do their own thing. And the only question is which splinter group is going to be the most influential in the long run.
Now, there's something I'd like to ask you about. So, let's say you and I've made the decision that, well, this is how I see the ideal situation. The ideal situation is that everybody, for me, admits, like I do, that paganism is that all the best parts of Christianity really are in the Platonism that they grafted onto it, which was essentially a pagan philosophy from Hellenism, and just acknowledge that, and then therefore be be open to paganism at least. Even you can even retain your Christianity, but you must ignore those parts in the Bible. They must a good and true Christian now in the modern times, which says that pagans are evil, the worst ever, and you must hate them. You must get over that and forget about that part. And then we're getting onto something. Pagans, it's a bit easier for, because like Hindus, they can just say, oh, well, Jesus, look at his influence. Sure, he's a god or a demigod or something. Fine. Add him to the pantheon. Maybe not, think you don't have to worship him like he's the greatest, but as a pagan, you can play these little syncretic games, and it feels like true enough. Like, it's like, yeah, sure. Right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would absolutely not do syncretism like that, because that carries the risk of getting your religion infiltrated, right? That's how they started with the conversions and stuff, where they were like, yeah, just accept Jesus as another god in your pantheon.
Yeah, but
and
for the sake of some kind of, you wouldn't try to seek some kind of common ground with the Christians? No?
I think some common ground can be found if we can get them to return to the medieval parts and the Platonism that's hidden in there. But I think one major problem is that they also very much misunderstand a lot of things Plato said, like about first principles, about the unmoved mover, which they identify with the Christian God, which is rather quite silly to do, right? Because Plato's one is not a personalized God. So there are just, I think, too many doctrinal differences. The one route you can go is that you slowly try to de-Christianize Christianity, like
Well,
moving the Bible out of it, I guess, which was tried back in the fun years of Germany. They tried to create German Christianity, which essentially cuts out the Old Testament wholesale and heavily reinterprets everything of the new one. And essentially, it said, yeah, we have to cut out the Jewish influence from Christianity, and then look at which parts of Christianity are actually German and should be kept, and then just slowly make people move away from the whole thing altogether, but by pointing out that all the actual European parts don't need the Christian framework to remain. Right? And I guess that is a strategy that could prove fruitful, to just say, all the best parts of Christianity.
sorry. How do you mean the European parts don't need what? Don't need? What do
They
you mean
don't
exactly?
need the Christian framework. They don't need the Bible. They
All right.
don't need parts that are in there. You can just say things like Christmas. It's a European festival, right? They
Oh
have
yeah. Oh
different
yeah.
traditions.
Yeah.
Or the Platonist philosophy. That's Plato. He doesn't need the Bible. He stands on his own. And then you just go through all the good parts bit by bit, and ultimately you can just cut out everything that's not European. And when you do that, you don't even have Christianity anymore, right?
Okay, so you're not so much you're not so much into a Christian reconciliation thing as I am, perhaps, as just sort of like, convincing them.
Yeah,
And
probably more into dismantling.
yeah, I just think you can't deny. If you're going to look at the world, say, I don't think we're particularly superstitious men. I mean, we may be in a certain sense, only because we've made ourselves superstitious from like after reading and recognizing the necessity of religion and the mystery, the sacred mystery behind the world that we can't fathom, that you might as well be, I guess. That you can't deny that despite the Jewishness and everything else, that this Christ figure had an enormous impact on our own history, undeniable, and that the scope of the power of it, for whatever reason, should be recognized. Is how I feel about it. Like, it's not that it's again, I'm willing to completely distance myself from it, but I don't have a problem sort of recognizing that and acknowledging.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have problems recognizing the historical importance of it and the contributions to our culture that were made by Christian members of the European people.
Yeah, it's more contributions more by Christian members than by Christianity itself. Anything
Yeah,
that
more like
specifically.
when you look at cultural things from the Middle Ages, that is Christian on the surface, but deep down the essence is European, and
Yeah.
that is the most important part, to have a consciousness that we are something special, and we should recognize what we are and who we are, and that we are within a long tradition.
Also, the like for myself, the specific story of Jesus does not. I don't know. Like, it's interesting. I don't find it like incredibly profound. Anything he said, or in the, you know, most of it. Like in my youth, I was raised to be Irish Catholic, and I was like told this is the truth, and I kept thinking and looking for it. Okay, so there's some part in the Bible or something I'm missing that I'll come across eventually that is incredibly impactfully impressive, and will immediately see the truth of it all. And I kept thinking, oh, this must be the case, because all these people believe it, and I'm being told this is the truth in this crazy ludicrous story, and that day never came, and I was like, well, okay, so you're just basically believing this because you really want to. Eventually a kind of
Yes,
certain.
I guess in the case of Irish Catholics in particular, it is sort of an ethnic thing, right? Particularly when you look at the conflicts in Northern Ireland. It's essentially Catholics versus Protestants is not so much a religious as it is an ethnic strife.
Yes, and there's various associations with both habits and cultural things. But my mother was a believing Catholic for sure. Whether it was, and she was not much of a nationalist. She never, well, like I grew up in Canada, obviously. She moved to Canada, and she never spoke anything about it. She never talked about the revolution and the war there at all. She didn't really, but she was a sincere and believing Catholic. So my father was a bit more dubious, and he was actually a Saxon gentleman, raised. Jesus, what was he raised? Not fucking Methodist, or was it Methodist? Oh shit, maybe he was Methodist actually. Whatever, but he was an atheist and kind of a nihilist and a bit shitty about it all, which is absolutely. I do the last thing I would want anyone to be, or conclusion that I would want anyone to reach from any of our blathering, is to be atheist. Not even fucking agnostic, really. I mean, even though I'm sort
never
of
never be a nihilist.
no, and atheism is just kind of shitty and stupid, because I don't know. What do you think about it? Like, I mean, I can tolerate a bit of it.
It's very stupid. I think it's foolish, primarily, because
That's good. It's foolish, yeah.
Because you're just some dude making the presumption that you know for certain, right, that nothing supernatural can or will exist. And that is very ignorant. That is a statement made out of pure ignorance of the greater world beyond. And usually I find most atheists tend to be city people who never really leave the big city or the modern society in general. Because once you take a walk through an ancient ruin or just a nice stretch of forest, or look at the night sky in a place where you can actually see the stars, I think that's going to dispel atheism for you.
Yeah, there's a great mystery at work here. Like, we don't have the answers or anything, and we won't ever understand it, I'm sure, as humans. I don't think. Maybe somehow we could, but yeah, you have to recognize that, like, to be so, yeah, the nihilism. That's what someone says here. Rex's Prime says, I agreed. I grew up an atheist, and I grew to hate it in 2020 because it's nihilistic, and I turned to Norse paganism because of it. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's good because it is nihilistic. Yeah, it's unnecessarily negative. There's no need to be so negative. Some people are naturally negative just in their nature, I find. Some people get depressive over silly things and like want to kill themselves. And I
Yeah,
hear the
there's
reason.
also this brand of foolish, dismissive atheist, right, who thinks he's so smart that he doesn't believe in the sky daddy. Um, because science can explain everything, right? And I think they completely miss the point that metaphysics is also a form of scientific inquiry. You are making an inquiry into the nature of the world and the universe, just that it happens to be an aspect of the world and the universe that transcends the mortal senses, but
Yeah,
it still exists. You cannot
like
see you can't see quantum mechanics either, but scientists have proven they exist. You can't see radiation, but it still exists. Yeah, there are people so presumptuous to say that no sort of deity can ever exist because you can't see it. That's foolish. No other word to describe it.
yeah. Well, say like Dawkins, I don't think is a fool. I wouldn't call him a fool. He's the famous atheist these days. He's a
Yeah.
guy. I remember seeing there's old videos of him on BBC like in the 80s, and he's talking his biology and he's talking about biology and evolution, and all of a sudden he's getting attacked by these American creationists who are like, no, evolution is garbage. Fuck it. Like here we are, and you and I here we're talking about evolution in terms of religion, which is funny, but like, so his whole thing was that he got so sick of that and so annoyed that he wrote this book and like made this big deal, and like he's really pissy and shitty about it in this kind of British way. I don't know. He's annoying, about it because he's famous for it now or whatever. But that was the whole basis of it. He was just sick of being an evolutionary biologist and having to defend the fucking story of Noah all the time, or against the story of Noah. He wish would annoy you. You'd be getting fucking annoyed by that, wouldn't you? Like, so that was his deal. But there was other. Who are the other famous atheists? There was the Jewish guy who took MDMA. Sam. I used to like that guy actually, Sam Harris. But he really annoys me now. Fucking annoys the shit out of me. I even read one of his books once. What was it? It was actually one of the books that kind of pushed me towards being a red pilled, as they say. What was it called? I can't remember now. But it was all about. It was a defense against moral relativism. I mean, from his point of view, it's just because he's Jewish and he wants to make an argument against Islam, more or less is what it amounts to. But he kept quoting another book in that called, and I bought this other book, an old historic anthropology book, Six Societies, it was called. And it's a hidden, forgotten counter to all the Margaret Mead stuff and all the anthropology, Franz Boas anthropology of the early 20th century, saying relativistically that all the savages in Borneo and fucking Papua New Guinea were every bit as advanced as us in their own little funny way. And he went through the litany of things they were doing and this in the Six Societies, and it's just fucking it's hilarious and grisly. He recounts how there was a tradition amongst the Apaches when, what was it? If a woman did some tiny transgression, I forget what it was, the official traditional response was that all the males of the local tribe raped her, including, I think, her own relatives or something like that. Something utterly horrific. And that Western anthropologists were there to witness this traditional act. This is something Margaret Mead just turned away from. And even while they were doing it, the men themselves were crying and like upset and didn't want to do it, but it was tradition. And the counter to the fact that every culture is just relative, and in fact that the noble savage is superior to us. No, it was a whole.
Yeah, that's not what we mean when we say return to tradition.
No, that tradition for
Not that one, please.
well, we can only speak for our own race and our own history, and we did have some, I'm sure, quite savage things. Robert Graves reads about the pre-Hellenic Greeks a lot, and they had some fairly. I mean, we all did in the really distant past. We were all pretty savage, But those people were still doing it right into the 20th century, let's say, right?
Yeah.
They didn't
Also,
catch up
I
to us,
don't, I
and they
don't
have
think
not
we
caught
have
up genetically,
quite
and that's why we
this
cannot.
level.
Yeah,
Like there's
we cannot.
different levels of doing terrible stuff, right?
Yeah, we'd have to
And
wait fucking 500 years for the people to catch up to us genetically,
yeah,
and we cannot do
some
it.
of it is justified, right? When you look at the main things that nowadays people would say were barbaric in our past, it's things like punishments for criminals. And usually you'd say, yeah, that was an innocent person that it happened to. That was justified. Maybe sometimes playing someone alive is justified, depending on what he did to deserve it.
Publicly with little kids there. Well, you
Look,
certainly get the message.
they need their entertainment, right?
Well, listen, if you have to have an understanding in that sense of this is my other big interest right now, the psychology of normals or basic people or people that were born to be serfs or slaves, let's say, of which most of the mass of any society of any race, a huge percentage of them are going to be these people who don't really think for themselves. So they go as kids to see the pedophile or whatever being flayed or drawn and quartered, and these are minds of people, potentially like Ted Bundy, who were impulsively violent because they're so stupid or whatever. And like he wasn't stupid; he was a psychopath. But there's a deterrence there. So you publicly see the person being flayed, and you think, "I will never ever do whatever that person did." And it's as simple as that. I mean, that's there's a good, but you have to have a totally unmodern, unliberal view and understanding that the average person needs to see something like that probably to make sure they don't go on a forum and invite someone over to their house and communally eat the guy's penis and then kill him and fucking cannibalize him. Right? Some people just don't have these breaks on there.
Yeah.
Not some people, like probably most of people probably. So there's reasons for these things. That's what, again, that was the strength of Christianity, that it put the pros in order with a schizophrenic threat. I mean, hell was a concept in paganism. Hell is a pagan word. So is heaven. Heaven, Hylfen, is a Saxon word. So it was in paganism, but it wasn't quite as stark, I don't think. I don't think they laid it out as starkly where you follow the rules or else. That's one thing the Abrahamics did that was quite effective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is particularly like Christianity and Islam. I don't think Judaism has that.
I don't know what
I think they just die and then they're in the ground until the Messiah comes.
I don't know. They're much more like old school pagan in their actual conception, where they're all about their race and all about their blood. It's which is the way we should be and need to be again. But I don't see a problem with, because they also in paganism also reincarnation is very big, which is it may not be strictly true exactly that way, but it certainly is much more likely of a thing than living forever in some golden city.
I find the idea of reincarnating into your own people, obviously, to be very believable, and obviously you also have the aspect of history and the universe being cyclical in the pagan worldview, which I agree with, and the soul also being cyclical would fit right into that. Right, you're born, you live, you die, then you are born again at some point. It's a cycle that keeps repeating, life and death, and then death begets new life as it goes.
Yeah. And even like you can see that in reality, in the real world, in that, like they say, if you watch the show about death, I saw some documentaries on death, and on the process of death in the body of a human or anybody. But even in a human body, it's quite fascinating to die naturally, say in the woods, or like where your body's like preserved in a coffin or whatever. The process of death is a long, interesting journey your body undertakes, complex, and it's like a whole other. It's almost like your life again is this journey of death that your body undergoes, and like perhaps your consciousness is not involved. I don't know. I guess you hope, obviously not. It's somewhere else, but in terms of what your consciousness is, like you never had it before you were born, as far as you know. People claim knowledge of past lives. I'm not so sure. I tend to think I do have a belief in this reincarnation thing, but I tend to be inclined to think
Depending,
that everything about my personality is not going to survive my death.
I would buy the whole memories from past lives things under certain circumstances. There are, yeah, there are perhaps some that I would say, sure, I find that believable now.
In a morphic resonance sense, or in like as in your soul is reincarnating sense?
Probably both, to a certain degree.
Maybe. I mean, where does consciousness come from in the first place? If it doesn't just sort of grow from a new shoot like another pea from a pod.
I do absolutely not agree with what the raw materialists say, where they claim, oh, it's all just chemicals in your brain, and that's all it is. When you got to be a turbo normie to say that kind of thing, like barely even aware. If you have any form of higher awareness, you would never be able to believe that.
Yeah, like Rexus Prime says, normies, where 50% of them don't have an inner voice, whilst the other 50% have aphantasia. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, that's the thing where you don't have an inner eye. These people can't see images in their head.
He says, yeah, where they can't paint a picture in their head, right?
Yeah.
So there's no images in their heads. Yeah. See, that's the normal thing. Like, yeah, I know. This is what I mean about them. Like, I actually think beyond that like whenever I hear, I'm continually reading these stories in the news or in this true crime stuff of just people that, it's not just that they randomly kill people or whatever, other people, just like their motives are so silly and stupid and selfish and impulsive. And I just think so many of them, are missing, are something more akin to psychopaths a little bit. And this is the greater mass of everybody. I just think that they mimic a lot of human thoughts and emotions that they don't maybe have. And like these things are good. This aphantasia and the other stuff is, it is something closer to psychopathy in a certain way in that they don't.
It's genuinely the first time I've read about that on the internet where people said they cannot form images in their head. At first I thought, you're just misunderstanding, right? You're not understanding it right. Like, it's not like you close your eyes and you see physically behind your head or something. You're just misunderstanding what it means. But then they said, no, really, I can't form images in my head. They just can't do it. And it took me a long time to actually believe that, because I find it hard to believe that a human being does not have this basic human skill, right?
Yeah. What does it mean? Like, what does it mean? It's so strange. And I bet you there's so many like that. So many. All these normals that like follow these routines that you can't understand what their thought process is. There's maybe not much
literally
of it.
Like pre-programmed NPCs in a video game.
Yeah, it's
they have
so
their
true.
programmed lines, and that's it.
So, really, what we have to do is start to speculate: do they really have souls or not? And we must really start to think.
And I guess big legends do have that aspect, that helpful aspect of being able to program the NPCs quite efficiently, right?
Yeah, Well, they've been totally programmed. They've been hijacked to be against their own best interest, which sucks and it's shitty. And they're the main force against us. This is our own people that are. The TV god is on the channel that tells them that they're shit and that they must. And they're not smart enough to see that open borders immigration and, zero fertility are not great things. And that's
Yeah,
not going to
you
end well.
have to change. You have to make a complete software overhaul with these
And
people.
even of those that are smart enough to begin to see it, a lot of those are kind of like the nihilists and the atheists. And they think, well, what do I care? Another ice age is going to come. I'll just easily slide out of existence and not care. And it's like, you lazy cunt, you lazy boomer, fucking wretched mummy son of a bitch. Like it's not going to happen so smoothly and easily. First of all, that you're just going to casually wink out of existence. It's like your daughters and granddaughters will be raped by fucking cannibals. It's not going to be some easy little transition into a nihilist nothingness. You don't just relinquish the reins of civilization itself like a little fucking out of apathy of all reasons, and even like a science-born apathy where you watch too many David Attenborough fucking uh, environmental videos, and you just think, well, eventually we'll all be covered in ice, and what do I care?
Yeah, I mean, our ancestors survived one ice age already, right? So
The idea is that we will get ourselves into space before this fucking business tears us to pieces.
also,
Somehow.
there was a little ice age in the 1600s, which was just a bit of a cooling period, right? Which led to generally cooler weather and harsher winters. And all of our ancestors made it through. So all this fear mongering about, the weather is changing, the climate is changing, that's going to destroy us all. I don't think these people realize how resilient the human race is when it comes to adapting to new environmental conditions.
So if you were in conclusion, let's say, would you make a prediction now as to what religion might become in the future for Western people? Would you have anything?
The one thing I am most interestedly observing is trying to see where the secular religions are going to go, because those seem to have the most adherents in a broadly speaking sense, right? Most normies tend to be just atheists who trust the experts as a priestly caste. So it's going to be interesting to see where this kind of thing is going to go, because it's definitely here to stay.
Let me just ask this before I let you go as well. So you said you were Nordic pagan. It took your interest, and then you read Plato. So you consider yourself a Germanic pagan, or what, or Hellenist, or what?
I'd say more of a just syncretic European pagan.
Right. That's good. That's good. That's a good answer. That's a nice answer. But yes. All right. Well, Magic Frank, I think we've done it as good as we could. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess
Anything else you want to say about it? I mean,
that's a good
that's
place
it.
to wrap it up.
So evolutionism a religion is a continually evolving, in motion stream that's going to go somewhere, and it's going to go somewhere. It's not going to stay the same. You think it's going to stay the same? You're wrong. You are wrong. So don't pretend we didn't tell you. Me and Magic Frank. Goodbye.